And we are back with episode 8 of the Relay movie edition. The movie of review today is Prisoners. But before we get into that, there was some movie news that I forgot to mention in the last podcast. Did you watch the 2017 Justice League movie?
Yeah.
So I think it got I didn't hate it, but there was a lot of people that just dumped on it. And it was kind of pretty well known that the director himself hated it because you only saw pretty much 1/4, sorry, of his part of the movie. Other than that, they kind of took their own route with it. So there's actually the director's cut coming out of Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, but it's coming out on HBO Max. So that's like, I guess you'd have to buy another stream. I really want to watch it, but I don't know if I'd go through another stream to watch it.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to because, I mean, there's probably mostly just because of the hype that's surrounding it, but interesting. And there was going to be another director's cut for Suicide Squad for David Ayers. So that's another one where people absolutely hated, and I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference to make that movie better. But just quick news off the top. But yeah, let's get into this review. So Prisoners is a 2013 American thriller film directed by Denis Villanueva from a screenplay written by Aaron Guzikowski. And this is actually surprisingly Villanueva's first English language feature film. And it was, I guess, loosely based off of Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. So a little synopsis here. When the police take time to find Keller Dover's daughter and her friend, he decides to go on a search himself. His desperation leads him closer to finding the truth and also jeopardizes his own life. So let's just get into it. What did you think about it?
Yeah, well, this was not my first time seeing it, so I definitely will have a different view on it than you will. But this is one of my favorite movies of all time, actually. I think this is probably Hugh Jackman's best movie, and I would say it's arguably one of Jake Gyllenhaal's best performances. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I think for him in this movie, a lot of what makes his performance so good is because his character is like genuinely intimidating based on how sure of himself he is, especially in this case where nothing is really sure, right? Like he promises that he's going to find their daughter, and you just kind of have to love
Trust
that
him.
confidence of a character like that, right? And he shows that he's going to go to tremendous lengths to get Hugh Jackman's daughter back. And yeah, that's one major thing. And certain mannerisms and stuff that he does, like I noticed he kind of
Eye
like,
twitching.
yeah,
I noticed it. It was the first thing I noticed in his character, and I wrote down like the eye twitches. It's perfect.
yeah, it just shows the attention to detail he put into his performance, really. And a lot like his character, a lot of the acting in this movie is really good, and it does a great job of showing a lot of vulnerability, I'll say, especially in Hugh Jackman's character, of course, who we see go through a lot in this story. And it's not a subject that we haven't seen before, but he takes a completely different route on it. Whereas normally the dad in a story like this would take the morality route of it and just be like, okay, I'm going to be a team player and do my best to help out. And like, it would kind of be a backseat to the story, but his kind of descent to madness goes like at the forefront of the story. And you kind of just forget at times that he's hunting for his daughter because you're just so focused on like, wow, what is he doing right now? Like he's just so out of pocket. Yeah. And for Denis Villeneuve, you said this was his first
First
major
English
movie?
film.
First
English, yeah.
English. Um, that it's a wonderfully directed movie. Certain shots actually before the girls are captured make me feel really uneasy because like obviously for the second watch I know what the movie's about, but before the girls are actually captured, Like a lot of the scenes when the characters are out of frame, they kind of stay for like an extra second or two, and maybe have like a little zoom, and it just kind of makes you feel like someone's peering in and watching them, and it's very well done and clearly intentional. Um, Roger Deakins, another wonderful performance here as a cinematographer, and I think a lot of what has to do with his performance is the weather in this movie. It's a lot of dark and stormy days, which of course it fits the narrative of the movie a lot, but it also he does a lot of work with silhouettes and stuff where Alex Jones, that's what I believe the character's name is,
Paul Dano.
um where he's in the RV at in the first act, or when he's in the kind of locked in shower thing for towards the end of the movie. There's a lot of silhouettes and stuff that Roger Deakins plays really well with. Paul Dano, I forgot to mention him. He puts on a great performance as well. He's probably the most frustrating person to watch in this movie, especially as you kind of you hate to see, like, there's a point where you're just like, you're with Hugh Jackman for so long and you kind of rationalize the stuff that he's doing until you see someone like Terrence Jones's character come in, or
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. Until you see one of their characters step into the mix, and then you get a snap back to reality. And I think that's a big credit to the screenplay as well, because normally as film watchers, you just kind of go along with the morality of what the main character is doing. But then when they bring in kind of the outside viewpoint, it kind of snaps you back to reality. And on that front, Paul Dano as well. He was really good, but very frustrating. Some other notable performances. David Dasmalchian, Dasmalchian, I think that's his name.
Something like that.
He plays Bob Taylor, their initial suspect. He's also terrifying in this movie. But yeah, the acting definitely carries it a lot. And the flow of the film's great, despite being 2.5 hours. You sit on the edge of your seat a lot, and you're just kind of, every scene just builds up to be more tense and tenser. And it explores themes of morality. It gives you a different look at the repercussions that comes with a kidnapping like this. I think it's a very unique film in that way, and it's one of my favorites for sure.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
That is the first. I've been waiting to talk about this movie the minute it finished. I've been unsettled the moment it finished. I finished this at about 2 a.m. last night, and I went to bed at 3 because I had to watch funny video. Like, I at first had to process it, and then I'm like, I need to go to bed, so I need to get something off my mind. I had the pleasure of going to this movie literally knowing nothing. I thought it was like a criminal, like I was confused. I thought it was like a criminal action movie. Oh man, was I wrong. Holy crap. This, like you said, it's for me, it was one of the best movies of all time. This made me feel more than Room did. Like, it just shook me to the absolute core. Performances, Paul Dano's always amazing. There'll Be Blood. He just a repeat performance, except he barely speaks a single word. Hugh Jackman, best performance of his career, I'd say. I don't like, just so emotional and so real. What I love, you talked about how you're with him the entire time, and then Terrence Howard's character comes in and it rationalizes it, which is really interesting because usually in regular movies, Hugh Jackman would be the lead character, and like you said, it's the only perspective you would see, so you're fully with him, which can kind of make it more of an action movie and a little less realistic. Well, not everybody is Hugh Jackman's character, where that intense of a person, that sure of themselves, so confident, that much of kind of like a warrior, that survival mentality. A lot of people would be like Terrence Howard, where they're scared. They know they're a little more thinking about the moral issues with what they're doing, and just not comfortable in a situation where, when Viola Davis that's another person, Viola Davis, like all the acting performance of this movie was crazy. When Viola Davis took the sack off of his face, I think that was the first moment where you're like, this is this is way too much. And then to find out at the end that like he wasn't even, you can't really blame he himself was kidnapped, and you can't, because throughout the beginning of the story, I'm like, okay, they say he has an IQ of 10, but is he faking it? You don't know. This whole movie keeps you guessing. You never know what's going to come. It exceeds all expectations of what you think is going to happen. Other things just incredibly tough to get through at the same time, but you need to get through because you're totally hooked into the story. There's so many times where I almost like it was almost like a horror movie, I would say. There was times where I was genuinely like almost covering my eyes, where I was scared when Jake Gyllenhaal goes into the basement of the priest's house and finds the dead body. There's just so many different layers, and then you hear that this guy abducted people. And luckily I was pretty oblivious to matching and actually putting all the pieces together. So the ending for me was just a total surprise in how it wrapped together. You talked about David Dastmalchian. He could have not said a single word, and he's a terrifying character. His face, because he was in Dark Knight as well. He was like one of Joker's thugs. His face is just, when he stands at the doorway, it's the most terrifying thing. Paul Dano, like I said, crazy. Everybody's acting performances was amazing. The layers of the story, how it transformed, just such a scary issue where, like we talked about in Room, you don't really see the creepy parts of it. This just fully puts it out in the forefront and keeps you guessing. If you really never know who the killer or who the kidnappers are, it's just insane. I'm so glad I came to this movie not knowing anything, because it took me for an absolute roller coaster ride, and all I could think about all of last night and tonight or today was this movie. It's just, you get immersed in it. It's crazy. And I think there probably was a lot of, not major plot holes, but there definitely were some, but just because of how powerful it was, it was perfectly fine with me. I moved right on.
Where were you thinking that?
Just a few. I guess let me see what was I gonna say here? I don't have them written down. Well, what were they? I guess the plot holes kind of work themselves out in the end. I think one of the biggest, not really the biggest, but the more confusing one for me was David Dastmalchian's kind of connection to the other kidnappers. And they talked about the snakes and like why he had the snakes in the box. I didn't really understand that, because they talked about how Paul Dano's character had a fear of snakes, but it never really related to David Malchian's character.
Well, I think what she was doing, the ringleader lady, she was kind of getting people to do her biddings for her, and I think that he was one of them.
Because definitely, yeah.
At the end, you see that there's like buried snakes in her backyard. That one of the forensics guys talks about it. Yeah, the ending as well. The ending I thought was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Just like you hear the whistle in the distance.
Oh, and that was another one. Why did he bury the mannequins? Just little things like that. I guess he's a creep. Obviously, he's just an absolute sick mind. Just little things like that. But that's what I said. It was powerful enough where it did not take away from the story for me.
Maybe they were just trying to lead. Yeah, maybe she was just trying to lead them in a different direction.
And looking back on it, because you see him creep into their houses, which is just so terrifying. And then you also see that when he's showing them the pieces, like the clothing articles, they say, oh, that's that. Like, and they start crying, and you think the kids have been killed. Mm-hmm. And luckily I was oblivious that I never connected that him going in the house could have been him grabbing the clothing, which was nice, because it was a lot more satisfying for me in the end, because I was pretty convinced that the kids were actually dead. And then I thought that the rest of the movie was just going to be him just taking revenge on the characters. The only thing I took away from this movie that was negative was, because in Room we saw Brie Larson reunite with Jacob Tremblay. I wanted to see the parents I wanted to see the connection of them reuniting with the kids because they built it up for so long. The mom was in bed taking pills all day. And then next thing you know, she's kind of like happy-go-lucky with her kid in the wheelchair. That was the only thing where I'm like, that could have been a really emotional moment which they could have shown, and it would have been pretty easy. It wouldn't have taken up that much time.
I think for the mom, I forget what the actual actress's name is. I was not really a fan of her performance in this movie. Um, I mean, I get that she was distressed and like she did a good job of that, but I felt like it was just too fake at times. Like I thought when Hugh Jackman was trying to console her, she was just very childish about it and stuff. I mean, obviously she was clearly on some sort of antidepressant, so you're not in a correct mind state, so it's hard to really say, but I wasn't a huge fan of her performance in it. Yeah, other than that though, it's a pretty amazing, like the whole kidnapping thing, of course, it's been done a billion times, but this movie takes like a completely different route with it, and um it's hard to say it's more authentic because nobody knows what actually would happen in that situation, but it takes a lot of the emotions and stuff that Hugh Jackman has kind of carries the the viewer throughout the entire movie, I would say.
There wasn't a moment where I wasn't totally immersed in this story. I wanted to know everything about it. I was connected to all the characters. The villains were just so creepy and so unsettling that
Well,
oh,
and that's the thing. They take you in so many different directions that you almost forget about the ant at the end, which is just
yeah.
like it's the perfect way to do a twist, really. And
And the one other thing that annoyed me about the movie was when Jake Gyllenhaal was chasing David Malachian, and he jumps out of the treehouse, lands on him, and then Jake Gyllenhaal like pauses for like 3 seconds and is like, "Oh wait, what are you doing? Hey, hey, hey!" And then chases off him. I'm like, "You could have caught that guy. You're way more athletic than this dude." But anyways, it's another part where it's very easy to look past it just because it's not. It's obviously it's significant, but it's not significant enough to take that much away from the movie. But yeah, just even the scene where one of the creepiest scenes for me where I was like, oh gosh, was when Paul Dano walks out with the dog and then looks
yeah,
around and starts choking it. And I'm like, whoa, it just got so dark. And then he starts singing the song the kids were singing earlier in the movie. It's just like, it's so sickening. It's just makes your stomach uneasy.
yeah. That's pretty much the review, I guess. I don't really
I don't
have.
know, like there there has to be more because I thought I just first of all, the opening shot. There's nothing I like more than a nature opening shot and some narration over it, which I thought was beautiful. You talked about Roger Deakins cinematography. I thought it was perfect because it never like it wasn't fully noticeable, but it worked perfectly. You went from really nice shots of the families in the house enjoying like a nice family get together, and then quickly switches to a shot outside with a slow zoom in on the house and like kind of dark color correction, and just when things are getting sinister, and he did a great job of displaying that even when the kids were climbing on the RV, and the shot from inside, if you look closely, there's a Mickey on the sink. It looks dirty, it looks grungy. It's just everything about it was super creepy. Even just there's so many different. It's like there's a lot of different shock factors in this movie, but I feel like it's not even shock factors for the sake of being a shock factor because it worked well within the story. When David Malachian goes into interrogation and he's just drawing mazes, and then they come in, start interrogating him. Jake Gyllenhaal goes out of control. Guards come in, he gets the gun right away. You're just thinking like, what is going on right now? Is he going to shoot them? What's going on? He kills himself, and you're just like, oh, so many scenes in this movie are just like, oh, just even if it's characters you don't sympathize with, it's just tough to watch, and it's just sickening. It just tears at you. It's a movie where I told my parents it'd be their most hated movie of all time. My parents would despise this movie. It's just so tough to watch. It takes some pretty tough skin to be okay with it, and I think it'd be very tough for parents to watch this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't share as deep of a sentiment with it because it's my second time watching it. Um, like, I don't think it's incredibly hard to get through. I mean, there's certain parts that are creepy and give like the suspense is enough for it to be entertaining. I don't think it takes it to the same level of uneasiness as a lot of other films, but it definitely does.
This was the most uneasy movie I've ever seen personally. Maybe because I was just every movie I watch, I put myself in the shoes of the characters. So I put myself in the shoes of Hugh Jackman's character. I put myself in the shoes of Paul Dano's character. Even Jake Gyllenhaal's when he's walking through the houses, just the torture scenes. It gets to a point where you don't even like really you kind of sympathize. You want him to find his daughter, but at the same time, you kind of get the feeling that Paul Dano just doesn't have something, like he obviously has something to do with it, but it gets to a point where he is a person with a disability, and there's clearly a disconnection here where I don't think he was on purpose really trying to hold back information. Maybe he was, but I think he just has problems communicating. And it's just sickening to watch, and it was tough, but just really, really moving. And I think it's because I'm a sick bastard, so I like, this is my type of movie. It's right down my alley. So I've read up and I listen to a lot of podcasts on scenarios where exactly this happens. So I know for a fact things like this happen literally all the time. So I know this is a very real case. And I know for Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal in this case, they themselves did a lot of research and met with families who went through this exact situations. They obviously not the exact situations, but God damn, it's just some serious stuff. And to know this stuff goes on, it's just such sick minds.
Yeah, I think my whole thing with it, it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it would be a lot more creepy if you focused on one character for a longer majority of time. But I don't think they should have sacrificed that for the story.
No, I wouldn't have liked it as much.
Because
that's what I'm saying about if it was just on Hugh Jackman, it would be a totally different movie. It would be, it would just be this dad torturing this dude, and it'd be more of, there wouldn't be many layers to it, because it gets to the point where it's just unjust, and it's a lot about morality. But it's really interesting because it also questions good people's morality, not just Hugh Jackman, but Viola Davis. I mean, Terrence Howard's character wants it to be all done with, but Viola Davis is like, we're not going to stop him. We're not going to help, but we're not going to help him, because if he gets our daughter back, it's worth it. So it's like, what would you do in this situation? It's just, I'm glad they didn't show Paul Dano at the end too, because I was scared that he was just going to be, I just didn't want to see it. I had enough of seeing his face when they took off the sack. Crazy. The makeup, 10 times better than Midsummer's makeup. That looked very realistic. I was glad it didn't look cheesy, because that looked damn painful. But yeah, nice kind of how they wrapped in the priest killing the dad as well. It kind of wrapped in another layer, which is also another thing about morality. This guy that's lived his whole life through Jesus and then sacrifices it all for his kind of making his own decisions. And it's just spooky stuff, I think it made it so much better for me that I went into this movie so blind. Because I thought Hugh Jackman was like a criminal. I didn't know if this could have been a bank robbery movie for all I knew coming into this.
Yeah. Final rating?
9.8.
I'm giving it a 9.4. I think it's a lot to do with the second watch, but I think the only one I put higher than this is Room, and yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how this didn't get nominated for literally anything except for cinematography. Hugh Jackman didn't get nominated. I think he could have at least who won in this one? Matthew McConaughey. I mean, I would have been fine with Hugh Jackman winning, and even for supporting role. I mean, obviously we talked about this last episode. Matthew McConaughey were great and Jared Leto were great, but I don't know. This movie,
I think it's tough.
Touched me.
I think it's tough because there's a case to be made, like, who is the leading actor in this movie, right? It's either like you don't know if it's Jake Gyllenhaal or if it's Hugh Jackman because they both play such prominent roles in it, and they both take the story in a completely different direction.
I can't believe I'd never heard of this movie up until like a month ago. I feel like there was not enough hype around it. Even if people knew about it, I feel like there just wasn't enough buzz around this movie. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of it has to do with, I guess it's a tough movie for just a regular movie just to throw on. It's tough. Like I was watching reviews where people said like, oh, I threw this on just to go to bed. And then next thing you know, you're up till 4 a.m. Like what just went down? It's a wild time. It was crazy. I enjoyed it a lot. And at the same time, it didn't scare the crap out of me, but I wanted to crawl away sometimes. Moving on to the next part of the episode, and kind of inspired by the movie, we're going to do top 5, I guess, most like unsettling movies to watch. So let's get right into it. I didn't really put mine in an exact order, but I just put all my unsettling movies, so give it a go.
So one of the first ones I have here is, let's start with Mother. Mother is one of the most terrifying movies I've seen in my life.
I'll just say that's on my list too, so we'll bang them both out.
Javier Bardem is scary, and like the film, why it's so unsettling is because it's not really that scary until the last like 30 minutes.
It's always very creepy and unsettling, but it's never, it just gets, I don't even know if it's ever like scary. It's just like extremely disturbing, and it's pretty much undescribable unless you've seen the movie.
Yeah. So, and Jennifer Lawrence puts on a great performance in the movie too, so I thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, I think was probably on one of our lists for movies you watch once and don't watch again, but I kind of want to watch it again, but it is just a trip of a movie. It's one of those movies where I don't even know if I liked it because it was just like, what just happened? Like, what just happened? And there's no explanation. It's not like a movie where you can go to like movie explained. Like, there's no explaining that movie. It's just absolute chaos. So with my first one, I'm going to go with The Girl Next Door, it's loosely based on a true story. And I don't know if you've heard of the true story, but it's one of the most horrific murders of all time. Pretty much it's loosely based, but pretty much the real story is there's this girl and her mom got arrested for shoplifting. So she got sent to go live with one of her friends from school's mom. And the parents were sending this other girl who was taking care of her, they were sending her checks. So like billing, so she could take care of their family, give them food, blah 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 blah. And as times got tough on the girl's family, they couldn't send the checks. They came in infrequently, and the girl who was taking care of them got really fed up. So she started like abusing them and not feeding them. And it escalated to the point where she strapped this girl up in her basement and she would torture her with like blow tortures and stuff. And then she'd get her daughter and son to come in and torture as well. And then she'd also get neighborhood kids to she'd pay them 5 cents, or they'd have to pay 5 cents to come in and watch her. Like she was like a display in the neighborhood, and they'd come in and like cut things into her stomach and beat the crap out of her and just do like absolutely horrible things to her. She ended up dying because of the wounds, and the movie depicts the whole thing, and it's the most horrible thing ever. I mean, they blow torture her, they do everything horrible possible you could expect. It's one of the toughest movies to get by.
Okay, so the next one I have is Gerald's Game. And this one's unsettling for a couple of reasons, of course, because like the underlying plot where she's just trapped in the worst scenario that's just kind of like laughable, but at the same time terrifying. And then how like your mind can get away from you during this time, and then that creepy man, I forget what the characters
Yeah, I guess we can't really, I don't know if we're gonna spoil, but
you just told the whole plot of that movie, so I figured we were just
don't watch. No need to even watch that movie.
Yeah, the Moon Man is a creepy looking fella, and he's like licking on her toes and stuff, so that's not fun to watch.
Yeah, it was an interesting movie. Anyways, next one, we talked about this one in the last episode, so I won't get too deep into it. Human Centipede. Nothing much needs to be said about it. Just absolutely ridiculous. Just the weirdest movie ever. One of the weirdest movies ever made. Odd concept. Whoever came up with this is an absolute sicko.
Yeah, I have that on my list as well, and I haven't even seen the full thing. And I think that's saying something.
You literally need to like just read the synopsis, and that's it. Like that's literally it.
But the other one I have on my list is Joker, and this one might be a little weird for this type of list, but I think it's unsettling because by the end of it, you're just kind of feeling for him in a weird way because of all the stuff that he's gone through. And it's also unsettling because of his condition, how he's just constantly laughing at the most horrible things. And then you're just like, oh, you're going to get so messed up right now because people don't know what's going on with you in your life. And yeah, maybe it's just also because like it deals with mental illness a lot, and it's a different take on a supervillain that we haven't seen.
Yeah, and I always say it, it's a movie that you definitely sympathize with his character, because at the beginning he's definitely, there's a chip missing, but he's harmless to an extent at the beginning for what we know. And then the scene in the subway where he's laughing, but he doesn't mean to, and it's just like or even when he's on stage and his nervous reaction for laughing pretty much ruins his dream. There's a lot of situations where it's like, and that's a real condition where it must just be so tough to deal with on a daily basis, where because laughing in obviously in certain cases is acceptable, in other ones it just doesn't fit right, and it never fits right in almost all the scenes in this movie. And the one thing I always say about this movie is that it convinces me that how somebody can come to the point where they want to kill somebody and feel empowered by it, because just everything going wrong in your life to the point where it's the only thing making you feel like people notice you and you actually have a place on earth. I can imagine like literally nothing to lose. I can imagine somebody getting that place. Not that it's excusable, but no, I can see that for sure.
And it's like the final scene with him and Robert De Niro on the stage is just like that whole interview. You're like, oh, because Bob De Niro has no idea what kind of mindset Joaquin's character is in. So then he's just going about his normal show, and then from the point where he kills him onward is probably the most unsettling part of the movie.
Yeah, it's a good one. My next one is A Clockwork Orange. Just another movie where a lot goes on and you never really feel comfortable. There's a lot of like kind of rape scenes, a lot of violence. I mean, the whole movie is about controlling it or trying to stop a dude from raping and kill and being very violent with people. So right off the bat, that's weird. But just the whole, even right off the beginning, the opening shot is zoomed in on this dude with one eyelash, and then it zooms out into like a milk bar. And everything about it is just you never feel fully comfortable. It's always very weird. The way they talk is weird. There's never a point where you feel like this is normal. I know what's going on here. The whole movie is it's another one where you end it and you're like, wow, that was very different. I love the movie, but it's very unsettling.
Yeah, that was my last one. So do you have one more?
Prisoners. So we
Hmm.
don't need to talk about that. We just talked about it for a long time, but that was one of the most unsettling movies I've watched. So that goes for the top five. Lastly, here we can move on to the 2013 Oscars. So, like we said, movies that were released in 2012. So let me just realize I didn't have them pulled up. Let's see. All right, so let's start with Best Picture here. The winner was Argo, and then it was Armoire, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Les Miserables, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30.
So we're gonna get into some years in these next couple of episodes where I've not seen a lot of them. I've seen Zero Dark 30. I've seen Silver Linings Playbook. I've seen Life of Pi. I've seen Django Unchained. I've not seen Amour. I have not seen Beast of the Southern Wild. I have seen Argo. Argo is a movie that has not aged well, and I'm pretty sure that's something that's universally known. A lot to do with kind of the factual inaccuracies of the story.
Screwing over Canada.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's entertainment. You're gonna tell the story you want, so it's hard to really get angry at them at that. In terms of the other films, I thought Life of Pi was pretty good. Zero Dark 30 was good. I would still probably give it to Argo. I mean, I liked Django Unchained, but I don't think it it's like obviously the social commentary, I guess, was appropriate for the time that it came out, but it's just like for that type of what's the word? I'm trying to just it's very out there for it to be a best picture, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
For me, Django Unchained was the best movie by far of this year. Les Miserables, I went to the theaters with friends and parents and almost fell asleep. Life of Pi was good. Lincoln's was good. Silver Linings Playbook was Zero Dark 30 is good. Argo again, like you said, it's a good movie. It hasn't aged well, and I think the historical inaccuracies kind of take away from it as well. But for me, Django Unchained it's one of my top movies on my list anyways. So I love the movie. I love, like I said, it's a very dark issue, but they're able to wrap in slight humor. Christoph Waltz is just an absolute beast. Leo, one of his best performances. Jamie Foxx, one of his best performances. I think Argo is definitely structured perfectly for the Oscars. It has that kind of political stance, America kind of what's the word?
Patriotism?
Patriotism, yes. and it's also a good movie, so it has all that wrapped into it. But so maybe Django Unchained was a little too, like you said, maybe a little too out there for them. But for
Yeah,
me,
maybe too
Django Unchained was
cartoony is the word. Like
Django
it's
Unchained was by far the best movie for me on this list.
okay. Best actor. Okay, so the winner for this one was Daniel
Daniel Day
Day-Lewis
Lewis.
in Lincoln, and then there's Bradley Cooper for Silver Linings Playbook, Hugh Jackman in Les Miserables, Joaquin Phoenix in The Master, and Denzel Washington in Flight. Daniel Day-Lewis was pretty good for Lincoln. Um, I don't know. Who would you pick?
For me, this is a clash because these are two of my probably top three favorite actors, Joaquin Phoenix and Daniel Day-Lewis. So it's a tough decision for me because I love both of them. But Joaquin Phoenix's performance in The Master, I think, is one of the best ever done. So I think Daniel Day-Lewis, like I said, and again, this can't take away from the movie. And I think there is a lot to be said to being able to portray somebody. But Joaquin Phoenix's character is it's so complex, and he takes it to such different heights and different ranges that I just I Daniel Day Lewis, it just can't compare. Joaquin Phoenix blew me away in that movie. He was the best part of that movie. It pretty much revolved all around Joaquin Phoenix, and he's just exceptional in it. And again, Daniel Day Lewis is my guy. He's amazing, but I got to give it to Joaquin. And Denzel Washington, Flight, great as well. Hugh Jackman, I guess, because he's the singing. I mean, he was good, but again, Les Miserables, I just hated that movie, so I would give it to Joaquin.
Yeah, I would say Joaquin's character as well, just for similar reasons. Very, very hard kind of character to play, and it's like you're saying, it's very complex. Um, Supporting role, Christoph Waltz. I don't even really. Yeah, it's him. I mean, Christoph Waltz is one of the best actors today, and he does best with Quentin Tarantino. And I think he plays a perfectly good complementary role to Jamie Foxx in this movie. Um, yeah, I wouldn't probably change it at all.
No, I think Christoph Waltz definitely deserves this performance. His performance is just perfect. Like it's another character where he's just like so confident in himself and everything he says. You just always pretty much entrust in him. He's funny, but he's also he's just it's one of my favorite on-screen characters. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is amazing in The Master, and he works him and Joaquin Phoenix. It's almost unfair to be in the same movie, but Christoph Waltz definitely deserves this one.
For actress in a leading role, we have Jennifer Lawrence, who won for Silver Linings Playbook, Jessica Chastain, who who was nominated for Zero Dark 30, Emmanuel Riva for Amour, um, Quivenjane Wallace for Beast of the Southern Wild, and Naomi Watts for The Impossible. I would probably still keep Jennifer Lawrence for Silver Linings Playbook. Jessica Chastain was also very good, but I think I would still give it to Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, Jessica Chastain was good. She didn't I guess, blow me away, but yeah, I like Jennifer Lawrence's performance. I'm fine with her getting it.
For actress in a supporting role, Anne Hathaway for Les Miserables won. Amy Adams was nominated for The Master. Sally Field in Lincoln. Helen Hunt in The Sessions. Jackie Weaver in Silver Linings Playbook. Who do you have?
I'm good with Anne Hathaway winning it. Although I didn't like the movie, Anne Hathaway was one of the characters that made it somewhat enjoyable for me. I mean, she played a prostitute that just is treated horribly, and her character is a very extremely emotional, very sad to watch. You could tell she had a lot of passion in the character and treated it very respectively. And I think she felt for who the character was playing. And also, I think adding the layer of having to sing in it as well is just another layer to it. And Amy Adams was good in The Master, but Amy Adams is good in a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if she ever totally blows me away.
Yeah, I'd probably keep Anne Hathaway. Like Les Miserables, it's not an exciting movie,
Oh, I
but
hated it. We wanted to get to that
um,
theater so quick.
yeah, it's not an easy movie to entertain people with, but she does a good job for sure. For cinematography, Life of Pi, Claudio Miranda won, and the nominees were Anna Karenina for Seamus. Wait, what was the hold up? Was the
The name
movie
of the
Anna
movie was
Karenina?
Anna Carey. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Seamus McGarvey, Django Unchained for Robert Richardson, Lincoln, Janusz Kaminski, and Roger Deakins for Skyfall. So I'm gonna say so tough because I love Skyfall cinematography.
I
Um,
love that movie.
yeah, and I think Life of Pi because it's so visually pleasing to look at. They're both completely different, right? Like I would say Life of Pi is so much more colorful, and Skyfall is very dark. So it's just
Yeah,
honestly at that point it's personal preference, I would say.
yeah. I'm good with Life of Pi. I think it brought more challenges where a lot of this is shot on water in a pretty static place. So making the shots interesting can sometimes be difficult, but they portrayed it very. It's a great movie. I think some people thought it was kind of dry. I enjoyed it. I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm fine with Life of Pi winning for cinematography. I didn't see Anna Karenina,
Yeah.
or so that was the only one I didn't see on this list. But there again, I mean, with cinematography, for the most part, there's not most of the movies that are nominated for a reason. So there's not much, I guess, controversy in this category. But I'm fine with Life of Pi because I think there was more challenges involved with shooting this movie.
Yeah. Okay, so that does it, I guess.
Do it.
So next we're going to be watching Manchester by the Sea starring Casey Affleck. Um if you want to go and check that out, then do that. It's on Amazon Prime.
We might be
Uh
crying some more.
it's um it's about a guy whose brother dies, I think, right? And he has to take his kid.
I'm not exactly sure. I've just heard it's really sad,
Mm.
but we'll see, I guess.
Alrighty. We will check in with you guys later. Thank you so much for watching and see ya.
Peace.